Afternoon, students, and welcome to my examination-based conduct class 2019, a certificate in policing, semester 1, investigative principle 1A. So I'll give you a bit of a background, the scope. That will be the introduction, the aim of the conduct class, structure, examination papers, and assessment. Course outline, scope, and the conclusion. Introduction. Introduction continues. The aim of the conduct class is the preparation for November 2019 examination, best possible change to do well, provide a framework for preparation, continuous assessment, calculation marks, question paper structure, the mark allocation, questions, level of difficulty, and verb levels. Continuous assessment calculation marks. Continuous assessment per the module consists of one of assignment of 120 marks for modules of 12 credits. A 50% continuous assessment mark is required for admission to examination. The duration of the examination for 12 credits is 2.5 hours, written examination of 120 marks. Continuous assessment marks, calculation of the marks, the structure examination paper. Structure examination paper continues. The structure examination paper continues. Structure examination paper continues. It continues. Continues. Now, the course outline, the scope. The guidelines of investigation and the importance of witness statements. That is, now the purpose of criminal investigation is to gather facts and other information for examination, to determine whether a crime has been committed, and if there is a violation, the identity of the perpetrator. To collect, preserve, and the preparation of evidence that will be admissible and effective before a court to convict the accused. Importance of a witness statement is to available to refresh the witness memory when testifying in court. It gives direction to the testimony of the witness in court, able to submit a proper document which is normally quality checked when the witness is an expert. It enhances production due to the fact that such statement could be a prima facie evidence. An expert witness does not have to appear in court. Importance of the witness statement continues. It also enhances the court process, as a statement needs to be submitted to the defense 40 days before the court date. It provides direction regarding the chain of custody, Article 212, subparagraph 8, subparagraph A of CPA. Relevant information is recorded. Relevant information is recorded. It could be utilized at any time during the investigation process. Evidence and the meaning. Evidence is anything that is properly admissible in court and that will aid the function of criminal proceeding in establishing guilt or innocence. Evidence is the means by which facts are proven in a lawsuit. Now, summary of what evidence it means. Evidence includes written material such as contracts and deeds, verbal testimony and objects such as guns and knives, which a court allows in determining if something disputed in court is a fact. Evidence includes all the means by which the truth of an alleged fact is submitted to scrutiny. Evidence is the means of providing proof of something and may be given orally in writing by means of production, documents, and through objects, which is real evidence. Different forms of evidence and why proper collection. We have oral evidence. Evidence is usually presented orally under oath in the presence of the public and the party to the case, and is subject to examination. We have real evidence. Real evidence consists of things which can be examined by the court as means of proof. Real evidence refers to those exhibits which are shown in court, and for example, a bloodstain on a murder weapon or on stolen goods. And we have computer-generated evidence. Computer printouts are copies of the original document, which are stored in electronic form on a desk and is sometimes the best available evidence. Then we have video and audio recordings. It was held in State versus Rangobing 1986 that there is no difference between video and audio tapes. And it was also decided that both of these types are document evidence. In a State versus Pumlo, 1986, paragraph 3, South Africa, 485, subparagraph E, the court ruled that video films is not a document and that video and tape recording constitute real evidence. The court ruled that it is not a document. And then we have photographs and films. Photographs and films may be documentary or real evidence when they are presented because they were stolen. They are real evidence. When a photograph is presented to prove what was recorded by the camera, it can amount to a documentary evidence. Evidence and different such methods. We have will method. In this type of method, the center of the crime scene, for example, a cop is a starting point. You start at the cop. Different officials are placed in each portion of the circle, and they start searching from the center going outwards. So this method can be used in large open space. And then you have a practical example. A spiral method. In this method, the investigating officer will start his search from the outside and work his way to the center of the crime scene. This can also be conducted by several searchers simultaneously. This method can be used in small area. There is an example of the spiral method. Then we have the zone method. In this method, the crime scene is divided into zones, and each zone gets a searcher who will do his own investigation in his zone. After they are finished, they can move to a different block. This method is useful inside the house. A strip method. In this method, the search area is divided into strips, and each strip is searched by an investigator. This can be done by one or two searchers. This method can be used outside or inside a house. The last one is the roster method. This method is the same as the strip method, but differs in that horizontal as well as vertical strips are used to search the area. This method can be used both inside and outside. Then we have collection of evidence. The charge office sergeant or the crime scene officer and the chain of custody. Upon arrival, the crime scene officer should always stop and carefully observe the entire scene before anything else. It is not enough to just gather the evidence from the scene. The crime scene officer has to evaluate what the evidence is telling him. The crime scene officer must always remember to maintain the chain of custody from the time it was found until it is presented in court. The scene of crime management evidence collection sheet should be completed. Who found the evidence, who collected it, and who processed it? All these questions must be answered and documented. A preliminary survey. The crime scene officer must initiate a preliminary survey, which means a walkthrough of the crime scene. You go around or inside the crime scene. Make observation about how the crime was committed and the type of evidence most likely to be found in the crime scene. Once the walkthrough is completed, the crime scene officer will know what they are dealing with. The functions of a crime scene officer is to determine expert personnel and equipment to reconstruct the crime scene, identify and protect transient evidence, valuable evidence, consider whether evidence appeared to be moved, a prepared narrative condition of the incident scene, what should be present and what is not observed and what is out of place. Consider situational factors such as doors open, locked, windows open or closed, odor, and the temperature. Identification of a potential collection point for important evidence, prevent contamination, hands in pocket. During the collection, the process followed by a photographer is imperative. Describe it. First, get out the camera and take pictures randomly. Take initial pictures. The initial picture should be overall view of the scene and the evidence. This should be representation of the scene in its pristine state, without markers, giving a comprehensive view of the scene. Next, narrow the scope of the picture to specific areas of the scene. Use markers to show the orientation of the items in relation to each other. A frame marker, placards or survey markers may be used depending on the location and the size of the evidence. The final set of photos should be close-up. Close-ups of photos should be included in a scale and a frame marker, which will correspond with the item numbers used on the evidence custody sheet. When the crime scene officer photographs the scene, enough photographs must be taken. It is not unusual to take 200 to 400 photos of a major crime scene, and with digital cameras, there are no reason not to take as many photos as needed. On the other hand, don't take pictures just to take pictures. Make sure photos are taken of things that are relevant to the case. Documenting of evidence. While finding evidence, it is important. Documenting is also an essential. In order to do it right, the crime scene officer need to photograph the scene, use scales or other markers with photographs, collect the evidence, and then record information about evidence on the evidence custody sheet. The chain of custody form. The chain of custody the final method of evidence documentation is the chain of custody form. The chain of custody form is written records of all evidence transferred from the crime scene to possession of a court or clerk of court. Proper chain of custody thoroughly documents the movement of the evidence, the security of the evidence, who had the possession of the evidence, and when the evidence was in person's possession. The chain of custody continue. The chain of custody must be accompany the evidence all the way to its final destination. A copy should also be kept in the case folder. Think of the chain of custody as if one link should be broken, the chain is broken. The evidence collection may be ruled as inadmissible. Details that should be listed on the chain of custody form. A description of evidence in each container. A specific recovery location of the evidence should be a case number, the date and time it was collected, who collected it, whether or not the evidence container was sealed upon transfer to another individual, who received the evidence, the date and time of the evidence transfer, who delivered the evidence, and the final deposition of the evidence. Working with exhibits. Limit the number of the individuals handling evidence. Confirm that all names, identification numbers, and dates are listed on the chain of custody document. Ensure that all evidence packaging is properly sealed and marked prior to submission. Obtain a signed or otherwise secure receipt upon transfer of evidence. When processing crime scenes, you will encounter many different types of evidence. Carefully collect the identified items and then place them in an appropriate package to be sent to the laboratory. Labels each package with proper case number and keep a clear record of all the steps performed. Fewer people who handle the evidence, the fewer people who have to go to court to testify. Packaging of kind of evidence. Small items should be carefully packaged or they could be lost. Small items such as hair and fiber on clean papers or in a clean envelope and then place them in a larger envelope. Once these kinds of evidence are safely stored in an appropriate envelope, the envelope can then be properly sealed or labeled. Large items like pillows and comforters should be placed in a paper bags or wrapped in brown craft paper. Of course, some items like cars and SUVs or even stereos, TVs and computers are too large to be packaged, but they should need to be documented with a proper label. Firearms. First, make sure that the firearm is unloaded, it's cleared and it's safe. The firearm should be packed in a box specifically designed to hold weapons in place. The outside package label must indicate that the weapon has been cleared. If the weapon has blood or tissues, mark the package with biohazard label. Firearms, this label is important because it will alert the lab to safety issue and will also indicate that biological testing need to be done before a ballistic testing. After remembering that the ammunition from firearms should be packaged separately, wet items such as bloody clothing must first be air dried or placed in a breathable packaging material or they will mold. To dry bloody clothing, collect it from the crime scene and place it in a paper bag to transport it to your station. At the station, hang up the clothing and let it dry. While it is drying, place white paper bags under the clothes to collect any trace evidence that falls. Be sure to retain the transport bag and white paper bags as evidence. Arson cases. Arson evidence. It also requires special packaging. For this type of evidence, packaging that will prevent paper from escaping is needed. Use either clean or unused metal paint cans or heat-sealed nylon arson bags. Do not use traditional paper barrier bags It is made of oil-based products that will interact with any accelerants that might be present in the evidence. Now we have steps in handling of exhibits after it has been recognized. First one is the protection, sample degradation or bacterial contamination, documentation, collection, packaging and marking, preservation before delivery to laboratory in the laboratory, identification, comparison, individualization, deposition, reconstruction. Now, the investigative interviewing. During investigation can be defined as a discovery of relevant facts, in making of inference from this fact, the reconstruction of the scene of an incident, the identification and apprehension of offender, and the preparation of the case for the prosecution and trial of the suspect. Investigation also referred to activities directed to the identification and apprehension of alleged criminals, and accumulation on preservation of evidence regarding the alleged crime. The interviewing of witnesses and suspects is the main function of investigators, because it is by the method of interviewing the investigators can gather the needed information to prove the crime or incident from the people. To interview is to talk to people and to question them to gather specific information, for example, own words. Interrogation, when there is no willingness, the situation change and the process referred to as interrogation. Interrogation refers to conversation between the interrogator and the suspect, during which the suspect is accused of involvement in a particular incident or a group incident. For example, your own words. Characteristic of an interview: non-accusatory, purpose is to gather information, may be conducted earlier during the investigation, may be conducted in variety of environments, is free-flowing and relatively unstructured. The investigator should take written notes during a formal interview. Characteristic of interrogation continue, involving the act of persuasion. The purpose is to learn the truth, conduct an in-control environment, only conducted when the investigator is reasonably certain of the suspect's guilt. The investigator should take any notes until after the suspect has told the truth and is fully committed to that position. Admission. Admission is a statement or action that is inconsistent with the position he or she is currently taking or defending a trial. An admission of any statement or conduct from which you should be crime may be convicted, but guilt does not necessarily follow. Some, not all elements admitted, magistrate judge enter a plea of not guilty, state to prove the element. A confession in a statement admitted to acknowledge all the facts necessary for a conviction of the crime at issue. Section 270 of the Criminal Procedure Act 51 of 1997 handles with the admissibility of confession by accused person. Always try and gather the evidence irrespective of existence of confession or admission. Preparation for an interview. The golden rule for investigators is investigating officers should, whenever possible, follow the dictum. They investigate the interview rather than interview the investigate. This means that the interviewer should be familiar with all the facts of the case and be well prepared before the interviewing. Preparation for an interview. If the interviewer prepared for an interview in advance, obtain all necessary information, communication with the interview will be in his or her favor. With information gathered as a result of proper preparation, The interviewer should be able to visualize in his or her mind an eye of an accurate picture of what happened. Objectives interviewing: identification of the crime incident committed, gathering of evidence to prove the crime under investigation, individualize the crime, arrest the suspect, retrieve stolen property. Cognitive interviewing techniques: report everything. The victim or witness is informed not to omit any details, no matter how small. The interviewer explained that even very minor piece of information may be important to the investigation. The mental reinstatement of contents. The interviewer begins by asking the witness to reconstruct how the incident began and the circumstances surrounding it. The interviewer instructs the witnesses to think about what environment looked like, from the weather, the lighting, to the cleanliness of the room. The recalling of events in a variety of different orders. The interviewer may instruct the eyewitness to start from the middle or end and move either forward or backward through the story at a number of different points. The change perspective technique. As the witness, to change the role with another person in the incident is to consider what he or she may have seen, ask them to mentally change their position, and ask what they have seen from their new location. Ultimate object techniques as an interviewing technique. The only aim of the technique is to get a confession. The techniques require patience from an interviewer and the ability to repeat the same question over and over. The aim of the technique is to send a message to the suspect that only the truth will satisfy the interviewer. This technique normally works with emotional and sensitive persons. Questions that will assist the investigator as the interviewer when he prepared to obtain information on a victim. Did the victim know the perpetrator? If so, what is the relationship between them? Does the victim suspect any person, and why? Has the victim previously been involved in crime, or has her or she been reporting crimes in the past? Did the victim have a weapon? Does the victim have an aggressive personality? What is the license number and description of the victim's car? Was the victim mistaken for someone else? Importance of the investigator knowledge of the crime scene and its circumstances surrounding the crime committed. It is important to gather following information: if the victims are companies or institutions, find out about their attitude and practice towards their employees and the public. What is the company financial statement or status? Is there insurance against losses? Any practice that could make the organization an object for criminals? It is important for the investigator to know and understand as far as possible in relation to the crime: how, when, where, and why, who, and what specific crime was committed. This will enable him to formulate the right questions to prove or disprove the commission of the crime and accordingly link or eliminate any suspects. In conclusion, the TAPS framework of exam investigation require that you know and understand all concepts and techniques. One fact, one mark, mark allocation, number your facts, bullet points, avoid dumping relevant or irrelevant facts simultaneously, marker searching for the correct answer, follow the instructions closely, use your best handwriting. Wish you all the best with your preparation for the exam. Thank you.